In a hurried exchange at a family gathering, as soon as I made an announcement, my stepmother, with a mischievous smile, impulsively threw tea on my father's face. She then burst into uncontrollable laughter. Shockingly, my father did nothing to scold her. The tea, thankfully only lukewarm, spread a stain across the suit he had carefully prepared for the day, but luckily it wasn't hot enough to cause any burns. To my surprise, I quickly handed a napkin to my dad, while Ethan, my boyfriend, frantically tried to blot the tea from my father's suit. Despite the tension, Ethan couldn't suppress a chuckle at the bizarre situation. Amidst the turmoil, my father remained calm, stood tall, and sternly announced he would take revenge by sabotaging their business. This unexpected firmness in his voice startled me. He grabbed my hand and we left the chaos behind. Ethan briefly scolded his parents and rushed to catch up with us, apologizing profusely. My father, with a serious tone, reassured him that there was no need for apologies and that we were done associating with his family. As we walked away, my father offered Ethan a comforting pat on the shoulder. My name is Julie, a 28-year-old raised by my devoted single father after my mother passed away when I was young. I have always admired his commitment to both his job at a factory and his family, managing to attend all my school events and often rushing back to work right after. In college, I met Ethan, who was 3 years older than me. He was kind, genuine, and well-liked. Despite his popularity, he accepted my feelings and we began dating. Although Ethan lived on his own, he occasionally visited his parents, returning each time looking weary. He always put our relationship first, and I was proud of him. Introducing Ethan to my father brought a mix of anxiety and excitement. Thankfully, they hit it off well, easing my worries. Yet, Ethan's peculiar excitement after their meeting left me wondering. As Ethan and I continued to grow closer, following our smooth interaction with my dad, a nagging worry started to shadow my thoughts. I began to doubt whether Ethan's feelings were as positive as he portrayed, and this anxiety only deepened when he requested a serious conversation a few days later. With a mix of nerves and curiosity about what was to come, I headed to the cafe where we agreed to meet. Arriving at the cafe, I spotted Ethan through the glass, already seated with a sad look on his face. Pushing aside my rising anxiety, I approached him with a bright smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Ethan, sorry, did you wait long?" I asked gently as I reached his table. Startled by my touch, Ethan jumped slightly. "Oh, Julie, you scared me." He laughed nervously, then motioned for me to sit. "No worries, I just got here myself. Please have a seat." As we sat across from each other and I called the waiter to order, Ethan's gloomy expression lingered, compelling me to probe. "Hey, Ethan, you seem troubled. Is there something wrong with my dad?" I asked directly. Ethan, caught off guard by my straightforwardness, quickly reassured me. "Absolutely not. I have nothing but respect for your dad. It's just that His voice trailed off as he avoided my gaze. Feeling the gravity of his hesitance, I pressed further. "Ethan, if something's bothering you, I need to know. What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, Ethan seemed to gather his courage before he began to open up about a deeply personal issue. He revealed that his parents were judgmental and overly intrusive, often disparaging his girlfriends to the point of causing breakups. His desire to marry me was genuine, but he was haunted by the thought of his parents' involvement in our future together. Understanding his predicament, I reassured him, "We don't have to let them affect our relationship. We can just manage their presence during the wedding and keep our distance otherwise." I reminded him of how well he got along with my dad, hoping to ease his worries. However, Ethan had more to confess. He admitted that meeting my dad had been a revelation for him. The stark difference between my supportive, warm father and his critical parents had made a deep impression. He expressed a longing to be more like the son my dad deserved. Ethan's heartfelt confession about his family troubles and his aspirations left us both contemplating the future of our relationship, considering how we could blend our lives while handling the challenges his family might bring. Ethan was genuinely pleased that my dad liked him, but he was torn about involving his parents in our lives as in-laws. During a moment of reflection, he suggested an idea. What if your dad came with us when we met my parents for the marriage discussion? Maybe his presence could inspire them to be more positive. He proposed, hopeful. I agreed to talk it over with my dad, although I wished Ethan had approached the whole conversation a bit differently. Realizing his approach might have been better planned, Ethan quickly apologized. Then, with renewed resolve, he formally asked me to marry him. After receiving a tentative nod from my dad, Ethan and I decided to set a date to meet his parents. On that day, dressed in our finest, we stood nervously at the doorstep of Ethan's family home, bracing ourselves for what was to come. Given all the unsettling stories I'd heard about his parents, my anxiety was palpable. My dad, ever the optimist, tried to calm our nerves by joking that maybe they were just a bit overprotective. When Ethan pressed the doorbell, there was no answer, which only heightened our tension. He tried again, but the silence persisted. Not wanting to start on the wrong foot, Ethan excused himself and went inside alone, leaving my dad and me exchanging worried looks. After a few minutes, Ethan came back, visibly upset but trying to smile and assure us that his parents would be ready soon. My father sighed in exasperation, and I couldn't help but worry that this rocky start might spell trouble for our wedding plans. Finally, Ethan ushered us inside. The reception was chilly. His mother greeted us with a sly grin, and his father seemed aloof, barely acknowledging us. Despite the tense atmosphere, I pressed on with the introductions. Ethan, gathering his composure, warmly introduced us. Despite his efforts and the genuine warmth in his voice, his parents responded with barely veiled disdain. The visit was trying, but I needed to support Ethan. His hope that my dad's presence might influence his parents for the better seemed like a long shot now, but we were determined to handle whatever came our way together. The tension in the room escalated unexpectedly when Ethan's mother carelessly splashed tea on my dad, staining the suit he had carefully cleaned for this very occasion. Shocked by her audacity, I quickly handed my dad a handkerchief while Ethan, in a panic, attempted to dab away the tea stains. His parents' laughter in response only fueled Ethan's frustration, and my father, visibly upset, stood up and sternly declared, "Then I'll ruin your company." It was a tone and threat I had never witnessed from him before. With that, he took my hand, and we promptly left the house, leaving behind a scene of Ethan scolding his parents. Back at our house, while my dad changed out of his stained clothes, Ethan apologized profusely for the incident. From the other room, I could hear their earnest conversation. Despite being taken aback by the behavior of Ethan's parents, I had suspected they might be challenging to deal with. Sitting on the living room sofa, my hands clenched into fists, I replayed the unpleasant events over in my mind, feeling a surge of anger at the disrespect shown to my dad. When my dad and Ethan returned, Ethan immediately approached me, his demeanor apologetic and almost reverential. He expressed deep regret for not foreseeing such offensive behavior from his parents. His sincerity was clear. He didn't even ask for forgiveness, but his regret was palpable. Feeling partly responsible for the debacle, I reached out and took Ethan's hand as he knelt before me, expressing my regret for initiating the meeting without fully understanding the potential for conflict. The situation had taken a grave turn, and I felt compelled to apologize to my dad for the unintended consequences of my naive suggestion. His heavy sigh and slumped shoulders spoke volumes of the stress the situation had caused him. Determined to grasp the full weight of my father's threat, I sought clarification. "Dad, was what you said true? Are you really going to ruin their company?" I asked. My dad glanced at Ethan and nodded firmly, confirming his intent. He then shared that he was the CEO of a well-known local enterprise,
and that their business was already under strain. Starting his career as a worker in the very factory he now managed, my dad had sacrificed his dream of becoming a painter to raise me on his own. His determination and protectiveness were evident in his firm response, underscoring a deep-seated resolve to defend his family no matter the cost. After my mother's passing, my father devoted himself to his career, tirelessly working his way up through multiple promotions. Eventually, he became the CEO when the previous CEO retired. This relentless pursuit of success had a profound effect, shaping not just his life but mine as well. During a recent, rather tense visit to Ethan's family home, we uncovered a surprising connection. One of the subsidiaries under my dad's company was managed by Ethan's father. Unfortunately, Ethan's parents' prejudices and his mother's impulsive behavior clouded this fact, leading to a series of misunderstandings and the current strained situation. My father shared that his company was grappling with management challenges and was considering downsizing, though he hoped to avoid layoffs. The weight of potential impacts on his employees was clear in his voice, filled with regret and concern. Amidst this, Ethan had a serious discussion with my dad. He suggested shutting down the subsidiary where his parents worked. This proposal came after a tough decision Ethan had made to cut ties with his parents, hoping it would lead them to reflect on their actions. Despite the potential repercussions for his parents, Ethan's resolve was clear. He also formally asked for my hand in engagement during this conversation. Moved by Ethan's sincerity and his earnest desire to engage with me, I too pleaded with my father to allow our engagement. My father, arms crossed, took some time to consider Ethan's words. Despite the recent troubling incident, he eventually gave his approval but set a specific condition regarding Ethan's responsibility towards the employees at the subsidiary. A few days later, Ethan presented a comprehensive plan to my father, outlining job placements for all the affected employees of his father's company. He demonstrated genuine concern for their transition, even offering to work without pay until the situation stabilized and they were producing positive results. He was eager to make up for any shortcomings with his efforts and salary. Ethan's proposal reflected his sense of responsibility for his family's company's difficulties and his desire to be a constructive part of the solution. This demonstrated his integrity and commitment, reinforcing my father's decision to allow our engagement. However, upon returning home, I learned that our marriage would be delayed due to unforeseen circumstances. As I walked in, my father greeted me with a mix of joy and apology. "Welcome back, Julie. You heard right. I'm sorry for making such an important decision alone, but it seemed unfair for me to be the only one happy," he explained, reflecting on the broader implications of our family decisions. As my father issued his apology, I seized the moment to advocate for both Ethan and myself to work at the company, with Ethan even offering to work for free. Despite Ethan's attempts to dissuade me, I passionately pleaded with my father, who initially responded with silence. After my persistent entreaties, he finally uncrossed his arms and gave a quiet nod of approval. However, Ethan's parents had not yet offered any apology, which seemed to be something my father had been expecting, but as time passed, he began to move forward with plans to take over the subsidiary managed by Ethan's father. Time marched on, and eventually the day came when that company met its demise. Ethan's parents, in a desperate bid, called us to their home. There, we were met by a crowd of former employees protesting the closure. They blamed us for the downfall, hurling accusations of seduction and manipulation at me, suggesting I had used my relationship with Ethan to influence my father. Ethan, maintaining his composure amidst the chaos, tried to pacify the angry crowd. He explained the situation thoroughly and offered new job placements, attempting to make amends. Ignoring his parents' outbursts, he apologized for the disruption caused and reassured the former employees of his commitment to help them move forward.
Gradually, the crowd began to disperse, their anger cooling as they accepted Ethan's genuine efforts to assist them. As the former employees left, reassured and grateful, my father promised to follow up with more details about their new job opportunities. Meanwhile, Ethan's parents continued to lament their predicament. Ethan, visibly frustrated with their shifting of blame, expressed concern over the potential loss of their house, which had been put up as collateral. Despite their pleas, they found little sympathy. The former employees, having been informed of the real situation by Ethan, dismissed the desperate appeals of his parents. My father also remained indifferent to their complaints. As they were left to face the consequences of their actions alone, my father didn't mince words. "I don't care what you think. You got what you deserved. Why don't you learn a little remorse?" He scolded Ethan's parents, who seemed unfazed by our rebukes. Exhausted by their continual denial and lack of accountability, I reached a point where I could no longer bear their persistence. Finally, reaching the limits of my patience, I confronted Ethan's parents with hard-hitting words. "Haven't you just caused trouble for Ethan all this time? Boasting about being business owners, caring only about titles, isn't that why all this happened?" My blunt questioning left them momentarily speechless, seemingly ready to argue back. But my father stepped in decisively before they could speak. "You're supposed to take responsibility as business owners. It's about time you completed your final task properly," my father asserted, silencing them effectively. With no room left to argue, Ethan's parents faced a collective scolding and could say no more. Leaving that fraught scene behind, Ethan and I moved on. Eventually, Ethan's parents lost everything: the company, their house, and their land. They failed to provide any security to their former employees and shirked all responsibility. When they had nothing left, they reached out to Ethan for help, but having severed ties, he turned them away without remorse. Rumors had it they ended up in jail, and we heard nothing from them since. Even if they were released, their debts to former employees still loomed large, keeping their situation dire. In the meantime, Ethan and I resigned from our previous jobs and joined my father's company, initially working for free as we had promised, living off our savings. One day at work, a former employee from Ethan's parents' company approached us, eager to express their gratitude. They shook our hands warmly at the new workplace, thanking my father for the opportunity and Ethan for arranging their new job. They also extended many thanks to me. Though I didn't recall the specific incident, they mentioned I had helped them carry materials on one occasion. The former employee's deep appreciation made us feel somewhat redeemed. Buoyed by this positive interaction, we rushed to my father's office. He greeted us warmly and handed us several thick envelopes. "These are your salaries for the past months," he explained. It ended up being multiple envelopes because it couldn't all fit into one. We were stunned by his gesture, barely able to grasp the reality of the situation, deeply moved by the tangible acknowledgement of our hard work and dedication. My father continued, his voice filled with pride and gratitude. "Your hard work has truly revitalized the team. They constantly express their gratitude and concern for you. I couldn't possibly leave such excellent employees unpaid, and thanks to you both, our company's performance has significantly improved. Thank you, truly." Hearing this, we were moved deeply, embracing each other as tears welled up in our eyes, touched by the genuine care and appreciation shown towards us. In the warmth of that moment, my father added something even more extraordinary. "Ethan, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with it, and my daughter agrees, would you marry her?" Overjoyed and tearful, Ethan bowed respectfully to both me and my father. I hugged Ethan, crying alongside him, overwhelmed by the happiness of the moment. And so, we got married, continuing our journey not just as a couple, but as integral parts of my father's company. We lived joyfully, each day growing more adept at our roles, contributing effectively to the company's success. Our personal and professional lives were intertwined beautifully,
bringing a fulfilling balance that resonated throughout the workplace. As time went on, our journey at the company approached a tender pause. I was about to take maternity leave. My father, Ethan, our colleagues, and I were all filled with anticipation and joy for the arrival of our child, marking a new chapter in our lives filled with excitement and new responsibilities.